So again, welcome everyone to our next webinar series. We have NSF with us, Mindy, Michael, and Kalyn. A reminder that McGraw-Hill is our sponsor for the AMATYC webinar series for the year 2022. If you would like to join AMATYC, if you are not already a member, please use either the QR code provided or the bit.ly link as well. Remember also, the views expressed by the presenters are not necessarily the views of AMATYC. Commercial products mentioned by presenters are not endorsed by AMATYC. We will be posting a recording of this on our webpage. There are several previous webinars already there. Please remember that it may take a couple of weeks for that to happen. And of course, remember our other professional development opportunities to you. The most fun one I'm looking forward to is our trip to Toronto for our next annual conference. And at the end of the survey, about 10 to 15 minutes before the webinar, there will be an attendee survey. I've also put it in the Zoom. It's a new thing I'm trying, so we'll see how it works. Anybody that's here with us will have to let me know. My email is here, and don't worry about trying to copy and paste that. I will put it in the chat for you towards the end. And so here is just a little bit of info for Mindy, Mike, and Kalyn. And what I will let them do is, if they'd like to just provide a little summary as they each kind of do their little presentation or spiel, I will let them kind of just elaborate on anything here that they wish to do that. So I am now going to turn it over to, I believe, Mindy, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
And thanks everybody for coming to our webinar. I'm gonna go ahead and share screen. And then let me try to get this in presenter mode here. All right, is that looking all right? Okay, so this webinar was kind of inspired by me getting a chance to talk to the incoming and outgoing presidents of AMATYC, and I said, you know, what can the NSF do for AMATYC? What kind of needs might you all have, or what do you want to know? What can we do in terms of outreach? And they said, you know, what might be useful is to really just learn more about how people can get involved. What are the opportunities for getting involved? Who's kind of eligible, and what can they do? And so today we're going to focus more on how can you get involved in the NSF, in our work as maybe someone that's writing a grant or reviewing a grant or even working at the NSF. And we're going to focus a little less on the different programs we have. But if you want to know more about any particular program that you might be interested in submitting a proposal for, something like that, we can also talk about that. We're trying to leave a lot of time for Q&A at the end, so there's not going to be a whole lot of slides, so that way we can just take it in whatever direction people want. So lots of time for question and answer. All right, so we'll start here with the NSF. Oh, sorry, I forgot we were going to do a poll. So Mari, do you mind putting up our poll just to get an idea of who's in our audience here?
I got you. Let's see
and
how
while
this
people are
works.
doing that, I can talk about myself a bit. So in the little blurb, I forget what all I had there about me, but I'm in a rotator position at the NSF, which means I'm here in a temporary capacity, probably for a couple of years. And I'm just on leave from my home institution, which is Valparaiso University. So what I've been doing at Valpo for the last decade or more is teaching mathematics and statistics. Taught, you know, anything from our quantitative analysis class up through, you know, abstract algebra and topology. Taught some stats, and I have done some math research, some math ed research, a lot of scholarship of teaching and learning work. My most recent and exciting accomplishment was I finished editing and publishing a book called Teaching Mathematics Through Games. So that was pretty fun. All right, do you think that's enough time for the poll?
We almost have everybody answered. I am waiting for 3 more to answer. So currently, if you'd like to know some of the answers, I'm not sure. Can you see the poll?
I can see the poll, but I can't vote as I'm not allowed as a panelist currently.
So the first question, have you served as a reviewer for the NSF? 100% currently are not yet. Have you submitted a proposal to the NSF before? We have 1 that did and 11 that have not. Have you been awarded a grant? We have 1 yes, 11 not yet. I love that you're saying not yet. Are you currently working on a proposal? And there are 3 that are saying they are currently working on a proposal. I'm going to go ahead and end it, okay?
Thank you. Well, that's great. That seems like, you know, this is kind of the audience we're going for, people that haven't worked with the NSF at all, or maybe have done a little bit and just want to know more. So this is great. Now let's see if I can. There we go. Okay, so the NSF process. You know, the NSF is a grant kind of awarding organization. We're funded through the government. We're a federal organization, and so we get proposals submitted, and there's different directorates within the NSF. We're in what's called the Education and Human Resources Directorate, and within that, there's divisions. We're in the Division of Undergraduate Education, the three program officers here today. And so most of the programs we're involved in, or all of them, are related to STEM undergraduate education. And so we look at people's proposals for projects related to undergraduate education, and we at the NSF then get external review panels that review these proposals, and we look at those reviews and make funding decisions about the projects. And so we'll start with the PI side, the Principal Investigator side of proposal writing. Mike, you want to take it away?
Absolutely. So my name is Mike Davis. I am a rotating program officer, and I work on a number of different programs. I could give you a real alphabet soup of what those are, and I'd actually like to avoid that because I think we want to focus more on the people than all those different kinds of programs. And what I'd like to bring to your attention, and what our polls pointed out, is that many of us have not yet written a proposal or not yet received an award. And I really do love that not yet. I applied to the civilian astronaut service, and I have not yet been accepted, but I am not done hoping. So at any rate, this guide here, the Proposal and Award Policies and Procedures Guide, which we refer to as the PAPG, is a freely accessible document, and it is something that is very useful to everyone inside the NSF and everyone who is looking to make a proposal to the NSF. This is not a document that you would start at page 1 and read all the way through. This is you can skim that way, but there are parts of it that are very, very valuable to you. They describe a lot of the pre and post award sequence. So a couple of parts that I would like to point out is in chapter 2, part C, there's what should go into a proposal, the contents, and there are sections dedicated to every little bit that goes there to provide a structure for you to work from. A good part of that to pay attention to is the budget portion. People have a lot of questions. When I see it got put into the chat, great. There are a lot of questions about like, what will this pay for? What will it not pay for? Where should I put these funds? The budget section is actually very good about delineating all of that. And then there's also in Exhibit 2, there's a checklist of everything that's sort of expected to go into what the most basic version of any particular proposal is. Should you be awarded a grant, Chapter 7 deals with grant administration. And there are a lot of questions that often come up after the award comes, such as, oh, this person is retiring. What do we do? Well, that's been thought through, and it's all sort of laid out here in this very comprehensive guide. We can go to the next slide. Program solicitations, you can think of as a very specific way of trying to inspire the best ideas to come from our communities. And so these are often 15-page-ish documents. They contain a set of rules. And in those set of rules, you'll get things like who can submit a proposal, what kind of institution is eligible to submit, what are the qualifications to serve as a principal investigator, and if there are any limits on the number of proposals your institution can submit, or how many different proposals a PI can be on. These all contain a certain description of the program, and there's also a part in there that often describes supplemental documents. So the program description will tell you a lot about what kind of program you're applying to, so you know that if you're sort of in the appropriate realm, or if you're in the right program with your good idea. The supplemental documents will tell you the sorts of things that are allowed to go into this, in addition to what is usually a 15-page proposal. Letters of commitment are often things that can be included in there. One very important thing to note is that sometimes the program solicitations can deviate from some of the advice that's given in our PAPG. And one example of that would be the Advanced Technological Education program, the ATE program. The letters that are allowed to, letters of commitment that are allowed to come into that are allowed to be very effusive. The letters that are described in our PAPG are really quite perfunctory. They just say that we are aware that this is going in and we are supportive of it. But the letters that are allowed to come in for an ATE program, they are allowed to have much more effusive letters. So just be aware that there can be some deviations from what's given to you in the PAPG. We can go to the next slide. One very valuable tool is the NSF award search. Now, I bet the link will pop up pretty quick. So there's a basic award search where if you have keywords in mind, or if you have institutions in mind, there's a single search bar. It's very Google-ish, and it'll give you a whole lot of results. If you're interested in a particular program, like improving undergraduate STEM education, or IUs, and you want to see what kind of projects were funded by that, there's something called a program element code. And the program element code, there's a space for it if you do the advanced search. I have it highlighted right there in that little window. And if you were to put in that program element code, 1998, and search, and you would get all the active awards that have been funded by the program Improving Undergraduate STEM Education. And it allows you to get to a very narrow search if you're looking for things in a particular program. So that's just sort of like a tip to help you get away from an overabundance of false positives if you're doing an award search. And then also each of our programs has its own web page, and our web pages have been updated with some interesting search features that will include geographic dispersity. So you can figure out where some of these programs are in relation to where you are. We can go to the next slide. And is this where you take over, Mindy?
Yeah, I can jump back in here.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, so part of what we look at after a proposal's been submitted, and what a principal investigator should be thinking about as they're writing a proposal, are the merit review criteria. Every proposal at the NSF is evaluated and kind of judged based on two basic criteria, and their intellectual merit and broader impacts. And so when we convene a review panel, this is what they're going to tell us about with regard to the proposal. When the people at the NSF, program officers, are looking at it, we have to think about these as well. And so intellectual merit is the potential to advance knowledge. And that's a pretty generic description of something, but it's generic for a reason, because there can be a lot of ways to advance knowledge and a lot of valuable projects that could do this. And we want to give a chance for many different types of projects. And in different directorates or divisions of the NSF, they're going to consider intellectual merit in perhaps a different way than we do in the Division of Undergraduate Education. So, knowledge could be related to looking at education research questions for a grant or a project. It could also be figuring out what's a way to recruit students better, and then you share that with other people. Lots of types of knowledge that we're looking for. And then in terms of broader impacts, that's the potential to benefit society and contribute to the achievements of specific desired societal outcomes. So, you could have direct impacts of the project on a particular group of students or faculty, or instructors, but then maybe there's even a broader impact to the wider campus community or beyond the campus community. And we want to know about those impacts as well. And you can see more descriptions of intellectual merit and broader impacts in the solicitation, or even if you just Google these, pretty much everything we're talking about, if you just kind of Google NSF with intellectual merit, NSF with whatever, useful websites will pop up. So given that these are the criteria we're pretty much judging everything, every proposal on, I wanted to talk about a better way to understand these and just kind of understand proposal writing in general. And that is through being a reviewer. So why review for the NSF? Well, if you are interested in submitting a proposal or resubmitting a proposal or starting one fresh, then reviewing can be invaluable. It shows you maybe if you're not even sure what a proposal should look like. And the PAPG that Mike talked about is a very long document, and you can kind of get lost in that. If you just want to see what other people have submitted, you could review for us and get a chance to look through some other proposals. I also just find it to be a lot of fun seeing what ideas people have. There's some really innovative stuff that comes out in the proposals and projects, and it's pretty cool to see what's going on in the STEM community. I also think it's fun to meet other people that are on the review panel. You can't talk to someone outside of that review panel about being on it, but within the panel, you get to talk a whole lot. And so you get to meet people that you might not otherwise meet, and again, learn a lot about the types of projects that are proposed. And you do get to list this on your CV. You can't talk to anyone else about the particular proposals you're doing or even the specifics of the panel you're on. You can put on your CV or resume that you have served on an NSF panel in a certain year, and that usually looks pretty good. So what's it like reviewing? Well, we have two types of reviews. One's called an ad hoc, and that's where we'll ask you to just review one or two proposals, and you don't actually serve on a full panel. You just read the proposal, you'll write a review. We give you a template to kind of help guide how the review should look. And unfortunately, this position is not paid, and it's quicker and less time intensive, but you don't get the collaboration of working on a panel. For panel service, we give you more proposals to review, but you do get a pretty good amount of time to do it. We try to give at least a month before the panel starts for you to do the reviews. And at the end of that kind of month lead-in time where you're writing your individual reviews, reading through those proposals, and I'll admit that can be somewhat time intensive. I was very surprised the first time I reviewed that it would take me a few hours for each of the reviews, for each of the proposals, to actually read them and write it up and get it ready. But at the end of that, you get 2 full panel days. Right now, they're all virtual. Maybe at some point we'll be able to have some in-person ones again. And you'll talk with the other panelists, and you write together what's called a panel summary. And all throughout this process, the program officers are giving you guidance on what should go into a review. Are your reviews, looking okay? What should go into a panel summary? What's it like to be on a panel? We give lots of guidance about all of that for new reviewers. And you do get some nominal pay for being on a panel service for the 2 days that you're actually meeting. It's not certainly not enough pay, but there is at least a little bit. And how can you become a reviewer? Well, I'll say personally, the way I first reviewed was I had been involved with a project that got an award and then was contacted. But you don't have to do it that way. You can contact a program director or program officer. Director and officer mean the same thing. Like the 3 of us that are here today, you can send an email and say, hey, how can I get involved in reviewing? And we'll help you out. We have surveys on a lot of the program websites. So there's a few examples here where you can actually go in and put in the information on your own. But you, again, don't hesitate to just contact somebody to ask how to get involved with reviewing. So what other opportunities are there? Kalyn, your turn.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Kalyn Owens. I'm also a program director in DUE, the Division of Undergraduate Education. My background is not in math, I'm a chemist, but I do come from a two-year college, so we have a lot in common in that sense. So we talked so far about writing a proposal or becoming a PI, and then also serving as a reviewer. So those are two great opportunities, and I can't recommend becoming a reviewer first as a great first step. More than Mindy just did. That I mean, it's a really great step to take, especially if you haven't been involved with NSF at all. It's a great first step. But what I want to talk about is kind of long-term thinking. What opportunities might lie ahead in the future for you or somebody else? And becoming a program director is definitely something to consider. Next slide. Do you have the slides, Mindy? Next slide. Oh, there we go. So in NSF, you've kind of heard these terms throughout this talk, but NSF offers, I would say, a rare opportunity for scientists, engineers, and educators to serve as temporary program directors, and we call them rotators. And two-year college faculty are definitely included in that. In fact, both Mike and myself are from two-year colleges, and we are currently serving as program directors. So we're a great example of that, but there's also been colleagues, many colleagues before us from two-year colleges. So what is a rotator position at NSF? We have three categories. These terms are not that important, but they're kind of nice to just know about. The first one is called an Intergovernmental Personnel Act, or we refer to it as the IPA positions. So both Mike and I are IPAs. These are temporary assignments to a federal agency where you have an agreement with your home institution or you're on leave from your home institution. And the work needs to be beneficial for both your home institution and for the federal agency. These are generally 2 to 3 year assignments, and you're essentially on leave. The next one is a VISE, or VSEE, which stands for Visiting Scientist, Engineer, and Educator. These are also temporary federal appointments, and individuals are on leave from their institutions. These are generally 1 to 2 year appointments. And Mindy is an example of a VISE. So we're doing relatively the same work, but we just have these different titles. And then finally, there's the federal temporary assignments. These do not need an institutional affiliation, and they're generally 1 year, but can be extended. So there's a little more flexibility in those. So we've kind of talked about, you know, what a program officer does just a little bit, but just to give you a little more of an idea, to sort of reiterate some of the things Mindy and Mike have mentioned, we work on several programs at one time. We process proposals in order to make awards, recommendations, or declines. We work with PIs who have awards and potential PIs who are seeking awards. So if you're interested in submitting an award, might be a great idea to reach out to one of us. We're open to talk to anybody at any time, and we're ready and willing to do that. We engage in a variety of activities that have to do with outreach. So this could be office hours or making ourselves visible in the community at conferences, and all sorts of things like that. And then one of the other things we do is make changes to programs based on new initiatives. So this is when we can really get involved in kind of the national effort to improve STEM education. And to me, that's been one of the sort of greatest honors of doing this kind of work, is really getting involved in the conversation and making and helping move STEM education forward, and being involved in those conversations. So making changes to programs based on new initiatives is one thing that doesn't happen every day, but it's one of those great opportunities that we get to spend our time doing. And then finally, creating new programs. And the one on the screen here right now is an example of a new program, and sort of an example of how our jobs get really interesting, I think, at least. So this is, let me just say, this is the program called Advancing Innovation and Impact in Undergraduate STEM Education at 2-year institutions of higher education. It's a relatively new program. It's been around for a little over a year, but really it's a transition into better supporting 2-year colleges in receiving funding from NSF. So it's specifically for two-year colleges. I think we like to think of it as IUS for two-year colleges. So if you're familiar with the IUS program, this is that program that dedicated and targeted specifically at two-year colleges. I have a few points listed here that kind of show you this frame what the focus of the program is: advance innovative and evidence-based practices in undergraduate STEM education at two-year colleges, address immediate challenges facing STEM education at two-year colleges, enhance support for research, development, implementation, and assessment to improve STEM education, and support systemic approaches to advance inclusive and equitable STEM education practices. So these are broad areas. However, well, this is kind of by design that it's broad, and we accept a lot of different types of proposals under this new program. So this is an example of what we would call an evolving program for two-year colleges. And I would say one of the things as a program director that I have the opportunity to do is come in and be involved in shaping this program and moving it forward and helping it evolve over time. We certainly aren't sure about what the future is for this, but as program directors, we get to be a part of it. And that's just really exciting. So in addition to doing kind of the daily things that we do as normal activities of program directors, we also get to take part in conversations about this type of a program where it's targeting new audiences, and we're kind of shaping and helping drive forward this new initiative to improve STEM education at two-year colleges. So that's kind of an exciting aspect of being a program director. So if any of that resonates with you, maybe put it on your list of things to do in a few years, but we highly recommend, I think all three of us would recommend thinking about becoming a program director as a long-term goal, or if you're ready now, think about applying soon, whatever the case may be. I think we highly recommend thinking about the program director position. All right, and I think with that, we'll just open it up for questions and or comments. We want to leave you also with our email addresses. So if you're interested in reviewing, or if you want to run your proposal idea by us or anything, please be sure to reach out to us. We'll be happy to chat with you, schedule an appointment or whatever it is that you need. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Kalyn. All right, so yeah, at this point, we're willing to take this in whatever direction people want. Do we have questions?
So I will encourage everyone to please drop your questions in the chat or in the Q&A. And as you're doing that, I actually had a pre-question that came in to me regarding or for the webinar. And so the question that I have is, when in the process of developing a funding proposal, is it appropriate or welcome to reach out to program officers to talk about process and early concept ideas?
That's a great question. I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see people better. But I think you can contact quite early if you want to be more confident that you're even kind of aiming for the right program. It is helpful to get to a point where maybe you have a one-page document that gives an outline of your idea, what you're thinking about doing, and you can send that to a program director like one of us and set up a Zoom meeting, and then we can get a chance to read through that and have some thoughts, maybe even bring in another program director that's in a related area or has related expertise, and then we can sit down in a virtual Zoom meeting and talk it out and see if you're in the right direction. So it can happen quite early. Really at any point in the process until it's coming up on the proposal deadline. You don't want to ask for that meeting like the week of the deadline, because at that point there's probably not a lot you can do if we say you're not going in the right direction. But earlier is better, I'd say.
If I could add on to that just really briefly, our email addresses and phone numbers are on websites and solicitations for a reason, because we want to be contacted. So there is never a downside to contacting us. It doesn't mean that a file gets opened, anything like that. We're there to answer your call, answer your questions, and please do think of us as approachable people that want to see you be successful.
And also, if you do submit a proposal that is not funded, reach out to the program officer who maybe processed that, and there should be what's called PO comments attached with that decision, and ask. You can always ask to have a meeting to find out a little more about why it wasn't funded, or what, if you have ideas for what you might change, you can talk to someone about that. That's another time to reach out.
There's a question that asks, what's the requirement to becoming a reviewer in the chat? And I would just say that really just being a practitioner and a faculty member in STEM is all that really qualifies you for that. So I would think that all of you are likely to be qualified to review. And we really actually need more representation from two-year colleges. And so we're always open and ready to work with new reviewers. It's an interesting process to go through reviewing for the first time, but most people say it's one of the best professional development experiences that they've had. I worked with a new reviewer recently from a two-year college who just raved about the experience and was really anxious to come back again and try and do it again.
Yeah, I'll add to that there's, Kalyn's right, there's no real requirements depending on the program that someone's reviewing for. Sometimes we need K through 12 teachers. Sometimes we need evaluators. Sometimes we need, STEM instructors, but there's no, educational requirement in terms of degrees, anything like that. It's really quite open in terms of who's eligible.
Yeah, but it is true that on a particular panel, we would be kind of arranging specific expertise. So your expertise does need to fit what it is we're reviewing. But other than that, there's no other requirements.
Another follow-up question came in around citizenship requirements for the different roles, or even I'm going to broaden that to say, are there such requirements around submitting proposals and so forth?
Mike, do you want to take that one?
Oh, of course I do. So with respect to citizenship, that's a really good question, and we will have to bring something back on it. But because what's happening is you're being hired as an employee, as a federal employee, for the 2 days that you're on a panel. A person that is going to do this certainly needs to be eligible to work in the United States. And in doing so, you will receive, if you do more than one of these, if you work on 2 panels, you'll receive a 1099 that documents this for tax purposes. So being eligible to work in the United States is something that's important. On the expansion of the question, Megan, you asked about, it was submitting proposals as non-US citizens?
Yes.
So it's one of the distinction we should probably bring up is that the proposals that are tied to institutions. And so when an award is made to an institution. Now, if the institution has non-US citizens, but are still working at that institution, that's something that's worked out in the proposal. And parts of the PAPG can probably address that more specifically than I'm prepared to do right now.
Yeah, that's a good point about institutions. And it can be institutions or organizations like AMATYC can submit, as an organization, can submit a proposal, and there could be many people that are involved or would be affected by it. Yeah.
I'm going to go back to a question from Helen. She asked about how is NSF currently thinking about equity? I know that it's a broad question, but if they're looking for race-conscious proposals, and I would say, yes, this is very much on NSF's mind and in being integrated and embedded into many of the programs. So IUSE has a theme that's called DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. So that's the big IUSE program. improving undergraduate STEM education. And within IUs, there's all sorts of themes. So you could apply to the mathematics theme if you wanted to, but you could also apply to the DEI theme. So if your proposal and your ideas were broader than mathematics, but include research around equity, for example, then that might be a good theme for your proposal. I would say the two-year college program that I just introduced also is very interested in supporting proposals that address DEI. So that's another one. And then I think Mike put it in the chat, but there is another program description called racial equity that's specific to this topic as well. And there's probably others that I'm not mentioning here, but I would say that NSF is like the rest of the nation, trying to make progress on supporting and funding these kinds of proposals.
Yeah, I'll add to that a little bit. Kalyn mentioned a few programs, and we have a link there that Mike put. So there's definitely some that are more focused on equity issues, diversity, equity, and inclusion. But almost all the programs, at least in our division, could fund projects that have that component. And so this might be a good time to mention, some of the types of programs. I'll maybe just very generally talk about them that you could think about submitting a proposal for. We have multiple scholarship-based programs. If you want to be able to provide scholarships to STEM students, whether they're pure STEM majors or education majors, we have different programs that are really scholarship driven. The bulk of the funds in the project are going to go directly to the students, and then there's other support activities that you can include. We have the IUS program that's been mentioned. That's a very broad program that is really, the IU stands for Improving Undergraduate STEM Education. So it really is a lot of things that could go toward improving undergrad education. And so it's kind of depending on what you want to do. If you want to support students directly, we probably have a program for that. If you want to try something new in your classrooms, we probably have a program for that. If you want to do education research, we have a program for that. And so, look through our DUE webpage and see what those different program options are, because there's a pretty good variety. And if you're wanting to do something related to undergrad education, we probably have a program that could fit in. Hopefully.
There is a question now in the Q&A. It says the survey for those interested in reviewing is for the time period September 21st to March 22nd. Can we fill this out even if it may be for the next cycle? Also, does reviewing require travel? So those are some great questions, and I would say, and my colleagues can correct me, but that filling out the survey, even though it's for a different time frame, will put you in the database, and that's so that you'll get the email when a new survey comes out. So I think that's how that works. I would go ahead and fill it out. And in terms of required travel at the moment, no. But the future is unknown a bit in terms of how panels will be run in the future. We're kind of guessing that there'll be some that are in person, some that are virtual, and maybe some that are hybrid. So that's probably the most I can say about that for the future. They used to require travel, and it was actually one of the greatest trips to take to DC to be a reviewer, because you really get to isolate yourself from your normal daily life and focus on the experience in DC and being at NSF in the building and with your peers. So that's a great experience in and of itself. If it does go back to that, to traveling and to in-person panels, I would still highly, highly recommend the experience.
Are there any other questions that you all have?
One of the things to think about with if you have ideas for projects and you're in search of a way to submit that, you're looking for the program that fits your potential project, and that's a common thing, especially into your colleges. I wish I had something that can help me fix this. Reaching out to a program officer is a great way to sort of narrow your search, but the racial equity program description and the program description that Kalyn Owens talked about not that long ago are very open-ended. And those are the kinds of things that are available to you that don't have a lot of restrictions. So there is, I'm going to say this intentionally the wrong way, there's unlimited potential budget in either one of those areas. And what that means is we don't put an upper limit on what a budget can be. There's of course a limit to the budget that can be awarded. But if you have a project in mind that doesn't seem to really fit into any of the baskets that you see that are associated with other programs, those program descriptions are a good place where some of those ideas could really be nurtured.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, in case you were wondering about the terminology a little bit, Mike introduced the idea of a solicitation in the presentation, which most programs, especially programs that have been around for a long time, have a solicitation, and it's a great guide to use to put some guardrails on your projects. But the program descriptions that Mike just spoke about, there's two of them right now that that we've spoken about: racial equity and then the two-year college specific program. Are under what we call a program description is just a mechanism to administer funding that NSF has that's very open, as Mike just said. So it does not, neither of those have a solicitation, which most other programs do. So I hope I'm not confusing matters, that there's not, so often what you might do is go looking for the solicitation for the program I spoke about earlier, for example, and there isn't one. So there's just the paragraphs of a kind of an overview of the program on the website, and that's really all there is. So it's very broad, which can have its ups and downs in terms of putting a proposal together. But again, it's very open, as Mike said. So it's a great opportunity to propose something that may not fit somewhere else. Yeah.
So I'd like to bring in a question that I have as well. And that is just general proposal, like concept development, generation, and proposal writing and so forth, is the role of a plan for sustaining and scaling the work that's funded. Could you talk a little bit about why that is important to to a proposal, why that is important for project planners to be thinking about in the earliest stages of their project development?
Yeah, that's another good question, Megan. So, I mean, in general, the NSF doesn't want to fund something that's just kind of one and done, where like you have this project and then as soon as it ends, nothing comes of it, right? And so we'd like there to be some sort of continuation or direction that can still have a lasting impact, that kind of broader impact of the merit review criteria. But depending on the type of program or project, that the sustainability can be quite different. You know, I talked about the scholarship-based programs we have. One of those is called STEM. We have another one called NOICE. And where the bulk of that money is scholarships, we kind of understand that when the project ends, you may not be able to sustain giving thousands and thousands of dollars of scholarships to students. Universities and colleges don't all have those resources, but there could be other elements of the project, maybe some faculty development or some kind of course revision or some other support for students that can have a lasting impact past the end of the project. And we hope that you disseminate that to other colleges or universities. And, you know, especially if you're doing some other project that's maybe more research related or curricular development, we want to see that that's going to hopefully be used if it is successful and disseminated. So I think it depends a lot on the purpose of the project, how the sustainability and dissemination can look, but it is important. Mike or Kalyn, you want to add to that?
Our reviewers will notice for sure if there's nothing that's talking about how this might be, how some element of this may not be sustained past the award funding. If it's never spoken about, our reviewers would bring it up. One thing that's really important to keep in mind is that if you write a proposal in 2022 and it's funded through 2025, and you intend to keep some of these things up into 2026, 27 and beyond, no one really expects you to know how that's exactly going to happen in 2022 when you're writing all of this. We're writing ideas, we're writing proposals, we're not writing contracts. And so these things may evolve. What you would propose in your project may itself evolve over the time that you're doing this. But some idea as to we're putting into place a high impact practice, we actually think that this part here that's going to be really important, we think that there's an opportunity to institutionalize that. And the details, you only have 15 pages. So the details on how you might do that, if you can give a sentence or two, what do you think that might look like? Great. If there is absolutely nothing that you can add to that area, that's something our reviewers will notice.
I see there's a question in the Q&A area, and so let's get to that one. Sean wrote that the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office has passed a dual enrollment and assembly bill. And so this is concurrent enrollment that enables high school students to take college courses taught by college professors at their high school campus. And they can count towards the high school diploma, allowing students to get a head start on their higher education goals. Are there NSF programs that support the initiatives in dual enrollment? And I don't know of any specific programs, that are specifically for dual enrollment, but I think if you were going to need to revise courses or train instructors, have professional development for instructors, that could fit into one of our programs, because certainly the IU's Improving Undergraduate Education could involve faculty or instructor development. And even there's other divisions that are kind of related to us that focus more on K through 12 education, and it could fit in there as well. Their DRL division, now I'm blanking on what all those acronyms.
Division of Research and Learning.
Yeah, so that one's more K-12 focused. So you could look into programs that are outside of our DUE division that we focused a little more on. And again, you can always contact one of us to get some guidance on how to find those other divisions and programs. But again, I don't know about specifically for dual enrollment, but it would fit into, I think, what's existing.
I would add that if we just want to get to or give one example of a program that might really be looking for something like dual enrollment or support dual enrollment, the ATE program, which is Advanced Technological Education program, is specifically for two-year colleges too, but for the technical education side. So it's a really large, long-term program that where lots of colleges are funded in this way. And one of the components is outreach to high schools and looking for, bridging high school students into these technical programs as well as dual enrollment. So that's one area if you were looking to connect your dual enrollment program to your technical education side, that's a really great program to think about. But I would say that some of the other programs as well, if it wasn't the technical education side of the college, would support that work as well. I think you have to be really certain to make sure that you're focusing on the undergraduate education piece and not the high school piece as much when you write the proposal. So it's sort of how you frame it for some of the other programs, and just keeping in mind that the focus is on improving undergraduate education, which dual enrollment is. So it's kind of how you frame it there for those programs.
So something that Kalyn just brought up was around this idea of like that partnership within, you were talking about ATE, the partnership within the high schools and the technical colleges and so forth. Could you speak a little bit to the strength of bringing in meaningful partnerships into a proposal or a project idea? Just very broad question there, but what could that look like, and what are some of the strengths and things that project leads should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really great question. And it's something that NSF is very interested in supporting and funding right now, is partnerships. But these partnerships need to be structured so that they're mutually beneficial. And one of the things we've seen over the many past years is that the partnerships are usually one-sided. So for example, if a four-year university comes in and wants to partner with a community college, it often isn't a mutually beneficial partnership. And those really stand out now and aren't getting as much funding. So what I really like to encourage is that as much as possible, the two-year college faculty take the lead on these partnership proposals and have very good representation in the budget and be involved in the scholarly work and the research, even if it's new to you. And, you know, so figure out how to become an integral part, and the more robust and the more mutually beneficial those connections are, the more likely it is to be funded. And so that's with the four-year institutions. There's also partnerships with industry. And so there's a lot of work being done on how to structure those partnerships in a very, very mutual beneficial way, but you want to make sure that that you spend some time in the proposal talking about how those partnerships will work, and making them very substantial. So, you know, take some time to write that up and establish what the partnership is and make sure that it's very mutual beneficial. So I think that that's a really great way to go for a proposal. They usually generally do well in reviews if they're done right. And again, I'll just kind of reiterate that I really think that that two-year colleges should think about taking the lead, and you know, really bring in expertise perhaps, but take the lead and really honor your own expertise with working with diverse student populations, with all the time you spent in the classroom. So even if you may not have some of the expertise that some of the four-year college faculty have in terms of maybe educational research or something like that, you can bring that in and you can kind of figure out how to tie that into what it is that you want to accomplish with improving your own programming. But don't be afraid to take the lead.
There are some programs that have financial incentives for partnerships. The HSI, Hispanic Service Institution. There we go. That one actually has financial incentives and financial incentives for one of those partners, lead or sub-award, being a community college. And so we encourage people to think about like what structure of the partnership makes sense. Is it equitable when it's being laid out? And you get at least two places to describe that. I mean, the 15-page document that's at a bird's eye view, yes, that's where it goes. There's a management plan that's in there where you really get to describe who's doing what and why and what level of expertise exists in those different areas. And then there's the budget justification. So you get these forms, you fill out, the budget tells us where you think the money is going to go. And the budget justification tells us why you think the money is going to go in those different areas. And in some of these places where there are some maybe lopsided looking partnerships, the budget justification and the management plan may tell us why it's lopsided. It may be lopsided for a very solid reason that you have a firm justification for. Many, many more times we find out that this might have been one of those partnerships that was born a week before the proposal was due to be turned in. And that's never happened to anybody here, right? No one's been called a week before saying, I'm going to be a partner in our grants. We're turning it in tomorrow. So these are places where you get to really highlight some of those things.
All right, I think we have about 3 minutes left. I just again want to say thank you to Mindy, Michael, and Kalyn, as well as Megan, for joining us here today. As always, this recording will be posted on the AMATYC website. And if you have any questions, you can either email me directly or reach out as stated to one of our presenters. Thank y'all again. Have a great Friday and a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.